What we're going to do today, we're going to spend a few minutes walking through a demonstration of how to repair this mat in front of me. And then we're going to, at the end, I'll demonstrate how to order a repair section, should you have the need to do that. We'll demonstrate that on our Acro Sketch mat builder tool. And then if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat as we go, and then we'll address those at the end as well. So with that, we're going to get started. A couple of key things I wanted to share with you to begin with. The demonstration we're doing today is on our AcroMat 100-1 series anti-fatigue mat. And this process of repair applies just to the AcroMat 100 series. So that's the AcroMat 100-1, the AcroMat 100 clean room mat, and the AcroMat ESD mat. So all three of those, you can use this same repair process. There's a lot of mats out there. We understand that. This is particularly about the AcroMat 100 series. If you have a different brand of matting, we can't really speak to that. That's obviously would be something you'd need to connect with the manufacturer on. But what we can show you today is the AcroMat 100 repair process. The next point I make, the repair that we make here, we'll be using an adhesive to do this. And the adhesive that comes in the repair kit for these mats is the same adhesive that we use in production. So it is exactly the same adhesive. So you're going to get the full value of that as well. It's not it's not something else that we offer as a repair kit. It's the same product. So with that, we're going to get started. What you see here in front of me, one of our 101 mats, and we've made some damage on here. So you can see what we're going to try and accomplish. So this mat has been pretty well beat up, and this could represent a number of different things in your facility. Could be general wear and tear from heavy foot traffic. It could be from a forklift damage. Could be from powered equipment damage, something like that. It could be a tear. Could be a rip. Could be a border got damaged, something like that. So any of those scenarios, you would be able to repair this mat should that actually happen. So as you can see, the damage is pretty concentrated right here in the center. So to start with, what you'll want to do is take a measurement to figure out what sort of size piece we need to replace in this mat. And you can see it's pretty concentrated in the middle here, somewhere around 8 inches or so. But when you're repairing a section, you want to make sure you allow plenty of space on either side so that we can cut away all of the damage. We don't have any of that affecting the mat after we've made the repair. So to start with, we'll want to measure up for a new piece. And in this case, you can see I already have the new piece here. So in this case here, we want to go a few inches on each side. And so we're going to call that 15 inches. So a 15-inch width. And then the height on here, we're going to go up to 13 inches. And that just allows so that we've got plenty of room to cut out the damage. Nothing going to be spilling in. So once you have your dimensions of your piece, the other thing to note here is that on this front edge, we actually have a bevel. So we're going to want to accommodate that. So when I order my new repair section, I want a bevel on the front edge. So once you know that information of what pieces you need, this case, 13 inches by 15 inches, I'll show you at the end how to actually order that on AcroSketch. But once you've got your order, you also get a repair kit as well. And then once you have your piece, the first thing you'll want to do, set this over the section to be repaired. And then we'll use this as a template then to make our cutout. And again, you just want to make sure you've got it plenty covered so that you're not leaving, any of that damage exposed. So you've got plenty of coverage here, and get that lined up with the front edge so the bevel will match. And then you can take, we use just like a chalk marker pen, some sort of a marker. just trace around the edge here. And you want to keep this nice and tight so that it's a tight fit once you get this actually cut out. But right now we're just trying to get a mark around the edge. And we'll come all the way down to the front edge as well. And we can remove the template piece. So now you can see on our damaged mat, we've made a nice mark all the way around, and that's going to represent the piece that we're going to take out and then replace with a new section. So with that, we recommend just using a utility knife and a straight edge. You can get that lined up on your mark you made here. And then when you're using the utility knife, just a couple of things. A nice, sharp, fresh blade is important. And then when you're cutting through, try and do the least amount of strokes as possible, because that's going to give you the cleanest cut, and keep the knife nice and straight so that you don't have an angle that you're trying to bond to. So obviously taking care, you'll want to cut into the corner here and then pull that down all the way through, the least amount of strokes as you can. And then also, whilst you're doing this, be mindful of the corners. You don't want to overcut too much on the corners, because that could potentially lead to a weak point later on. So just be a little bit mindful of that when you're cutting into the corners. You can always touch them up at the end, but just don't overcut at that point. And then we're going to cut along the last piece here. Once again, just mindful of the corners. And you'll probably need to just touch up those corners a little bit as well. Make sure you get them cut out here. Once you've made your cut, then you've actually removed the damaged section completely from the mat. So you can see here now how we've taken that section out. All of the damage is contained within this piece. Then we have our new section ready to go back in. You can obviously just check that for fit to make sure we've got it how we want it before you get started. And the 100 mat material is thankfully very forgiving, so you can appreciate that once you start making these cuts, that it has some flex to it, so that makes it a little easier when you're making these repairs. It's not a rigid mat, so you've got some room to maneuver. So once you have that confirmed and your cut is good, like I said, when you're cutting it down, just try and keep the edges as square as you can. That'll allow for the best bond. So once that's ready, then we move on to the repair kit. And in the contents of this kit, a pair of gloves is always helpful. It's pretty tacky glue, so prevents that getting on your hands. So it'll be in the kit. Then you have the adhesive that we'll use, the rubber cement, and then the activator that goes along with that. There's also a instruction sheet as well that can help you follow along. And we have the stir stick that we'll use to mix it up, as well as the application tray and roller, and lastly a small dauber to help get into the corners. So That's the contents of the kit. And so what we'll do first is prep our roller, get that ready to go. So that's just a small paint roller in the tray. There's an extra cover as well in case you're making multiple repairs. You can maybe need to replace the roller as you get going. And then open the adhesive. And this kit is already pre-measured, so you don't have to do any measuring. You'll just empty the entire contents of the activator, which is this one. You'll empty that right into the can of adhesive, so you don't need to measure anything out here. So empty that contents in. And then we'll use the stir stick to mix the contents. And you'll want to make sure you mix this thoroughly, because it does need to the activator needs to work all the way down through the rubber cement. So take some time to mix this up. Don't want to rush this. You want to make sure it's all worked in very thoroughly. If you see any just watery activator left on the surface, you want to keep mixing until that's all the way mixed through. That'll make sure that it's a nice strong bond once we start applying it. So take some time to mix this in. You'll see it's a pretty thick formula, so it takes a little bit to get that worked all the way down. And obviously, if in doubt, always just mix a little longer. So so we have that mixed how we want it. And we're going to pour some into the tray here, the application tray. And depending on the size of the repair, you can leave some of it in the can if you want to, or empty the entire contents. That's up to you, depending on the size of the repair that you're making. This case, we shouldn't need too much. We'll just put some in and then put the rest aside for now. So once we have this ready to go, the way that the rubber cement works, you have to use 2 different coats. The first coat, we'll want to let that dry completely, and then add a second coat, and then that one can just tack off before we bond the 2 pieces together. So I'm going to start with the section. I'm just going to overhang this off my table. That will make it a little easier to apply. And you just get a coat of the adhesive out of your tray here. And then we're going to just apply that around the edge. And you can tell as you're going how the application is looking. You can see it looks, I don't know if you can see from there, but it looks a little shiny on the edge. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is a nice shiny cover, and make sure it's properly coated and going to give us a good strong bond. So we'll go around all 3 edges of this one first. And again, we want to make sure it's good coverage. We do also include in the kit this little dauber right here, and that's helpful for getting into the inside corners where the roller might not be able to reach. So you can use that to touch up those corners there on the inside. So that's the first coat on. Now I just wanted to touch on the repair kit a little bit whilst we wait for this first coat to dry completely. And that is that once activated, it is a single-use repair kit. So you will want to move relatively quickly to get the repair done. And if you're making multiple repairs, just keep going until you've got those finished. It will probably last about you know, 2 hours or so in moderate temperature is probably about what you'll the amount of time you'll have after you mix it up. So just keep that in mind when you're making the repair, that after that point it becomes too tacky, and then it doesn't give you a good bond. So now we've got that first coat, and you can tell from looking at the mat that it is dried off, and you can also tell when you touch it with your glove, nothing's coming off. So now it's ready for the second coat to be applied. So then we'll go ahead and add our second coat all the way around, and make sure this is a nice good coverage as well, giving it plenty of adhesive on all of the edges. We'll just work our way around. Last side of this one. And again, you can see it's pretty shiny when you apply that second coat. That helps you to judge your coverage as well. So it's easy to get a visual on it. So that's that second coat done. Now we're going to second coat our existing piece. So again, making sure we have nice coverage on all of those sides. There we go. And we'll just touch up in those corners as well with this. Make sure we've got good coverage all the way into the corner there. Okay, so that's good coverage. Now what we're looking for on the second coat is we want it to dry to a point where it's just tacky to the touch, but not still runny. That way it's going to really grab once we put the two sections together. So a good test is with your glove again. Once you touch it, as long as nothing's coming off, but you can still feel it give you that little bit of tack, then you know you're about ready to go. So this piece is looking in pretty good shape now. And then this other one, we'll just make sure it's, seeing as we did this last, make sure this is looking in good shape as well. So it's looking good. And so what you can do, like I said, it has some flex, so you can give yourself a little room to work, set your new piece in. And you want to start in one of the corners here and tighten up that corner first. And then as you're working your way along, what you'll want to do is keep the top of the mat flush. If there's any variation in the thickness of the mats, especially if your existing piece may be a little worn down by now, just keep the top surface flush. And then the difference can actually just be taken out underneath. And that just makes sure that there's not going to be any extra wear point on this seam after you put it back into use. So we'll just work our way now along the edge here, just pushing that seam together with our hands. Once you get close to the other corner here, you'll want to just pull that in tight, get that all lined up nice and tight here. And then we can work our way down each side, doing the same thing and keeping the alignment of the surface flush, and then also keeping alignment as we work down towards the outside of the mat on that bevel. So keep that nice and tight, and then we'll work down the other side. If you do have any excess on the top, like I did here, you can wipe that off a little bit. And of course, the foot traffic itself is going to take care of any excess residue, so you don't need to worry too much about that. that takes care of the top side. And just make sure you've got it pushed in nice and tight all the way around, and you can go around this a couple of times just to make sure there's no pockets in here that haven't attached. And then once you're done on the top, we do recommend getting underneath if at all possible and doing the same thing around the underneath side. That just makes sure there's no pockets on the underneath as well that might have got missed when you made that. So you can see up this side, could be just how it was cut. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a slight gap here. So that's why it's important to just go underneath and then do the same thing and just push that seam together. And that closes up any gaps that you might have there. Once you flip that back over, aside from our little bit of excess and our marker pen that you can still see some of, you can now see that we've got a completely repaired mat. You can see the seam, but that is with factory adhesive now. So this mat can then be put back into functional use, discard the piece that was damaged, and now you have a completely new mat again that's going to be safer and more comfortable for the operators that are working on it. Now, we do recommend a couple of hours dry time if possible. You can already see that it's in pretty good shape. I mean, I'm tugging this pretty hard and nothing's happening to it. But if there's heavy foot traffic, it's good to give yourself a little time to allow that adhesive to fully cure. And if it has to go back into service immediately with foot traffic, what you can do is just put a section of tape over the seam just to prevent anything from getting, kicked apart or anything like that. And then just maybe take that off the next day just to help keep that seam together whilst the adhesive dries off. So that's the process of a repair. Pretty simple, pretty easy, but very effective to replace anything damaged in your 100 series mats. So next thing I wanted to show you was how you would go about ordering that replacement section. So AcroSketch is our online custom mat builder tool. For those of you who haven't seen or used this tool yet, it's on acromat.com/acrosketch. And this is where you can configure, design any type of custom mat. So what we're looking for here, once you click the configure button, we're going to use the custom tool this time. We're going to make our shape that we need, which is just a little rectangle. That's all we need for this repair. And if you remember, it was 13 inches by 15 inches. So we're just going to make this 13 by 15. And that's the section that we needed to replace this damaged section. And then in this case, it had one factory bevel on the outside edge. So if you click the bevel tool here twice, this one was just a plain black, yours may be yellow. So if you want yellow, just click it once. To get to the black, you click it twice, and you add your bevel on that outside edge. So that's going to get you a section just like the one I used, 13 inches by 15 inches with a bevel on just one side. The other three sides are going to be square cut, so you can bond those in. So it's a very small section. You scroll down, you choose your mat options. In our case, it was the 101. It could have been either the clean room or the ESD as well. It was a black mat, plain border, textured surface with no drainage holes and no grip coat. So we could just call this the repair section. Yep, acknowledge that we've got the dimensions correct. So you can see just repairing this one section is about a $21 piece of mat. So very, very cost effective compared to having to replace a whole mat. Obviously, this was a small mat that we demonstrated on, but you can imagine if it was a sort of 30, 40, 50 foot long custom mat could be very cost effective just replacing a small section of that. You can add that to your cart. And then the repair kit, you can just search for that as well. And it's right here, the R100 Ultra rubber cement. And that's the entire kit, like I just showed you, comes with the rubber cement, the activator, and all the tools you need to make that repair, the list down here. So you can add that to your cart as well. So you can see here that that entire repair that we just made was $70.57. Very great way, cost-effective way of repurposing mats that have been damaged. Or you can also use this same concept if you're modifying an area. So maybe the shape of your cell has changed, or you've added a workstation, the mat is no longer quite the right size or shape. You can actually use this same process to repurpose some of those mats as well to different shapes and sizes. So trust that's been a helpful demonstration. I'm going to just take a look now at what we've got for questions. Looks like first question is about the shelf life. I think we talked about that a little bit. It is a one-time use. So once you mix it up, you have about 2 hours to use it, and then it'll be kind of beyond its useful life. There's a question about ventilation and VOCs. We can share the SDS sheet for the chemicals that are used in the rubber cement and activator. I know different companies have different requirements for how they handle each different type of chemical, but as long as it's not in a confined space, I don't think there's any issue with that as well. Yes, this does also apply to the ESD, the 100 ESD mats. You can use the same process for repairing those. The cure time on the adhesive, like I said, probably allow a couple of hours until it's properly set. But as you can see, it was pretty quick to get to a point where I'm tugging on it fairly hard and it's not coming apart already. So it does grab pretty quickly, but about 2 hours is what you'll want to allow to get a firm bond. So disposal method for leftover adhesive, again, kind of down to sort of whatever policies each company has on their chemical policies. So share the SDS sheet and you can make your determinations based on that. But we recommend just leaving it in the jar, and it will actually just harden, and then it's easier to take care of. Another question about how far away from the damaged area should we measure out? I would say at least 2 inches beyond any damage is a good rule of thumb. That just gives you enough space when you're tracing around it to not have to get too tight, and make sure that all the damage is cut out. So a couple of inches is probably a good rule of thumb for that. I think that's most of the questions. I know there's a lot on here about the actual chemical itself, and so we can share the SDS sheets with everybody to answer some of those questions as well. And I think there's another question on here about 2023. I'm sure you're all excited for that coming as well, but that's correct. In 2023, everything over $100 is free shipping. So if your order is over 100, the repair kit and the section that you need will be included in that free shipping as well. So I think that gets to the end of what I see for questions. If there's any I've missed, we'll follow up afterwards. And we want to thank everybody for taking a few minutes out of their day today. Hopefully it's been insightful presentation, and wishing you happy holidays and all the best. We look forward to catching up again in the new year. So